Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. Every month I make my own scrapbooking kit based off of inspiration, and then once a month I make my own products based off of that same inspiration. I will link you up to my kit build if you don't know about that. This month I'm splitting up my makes into 3 separate parts because that does help YouTube reach viewers who are looking for very specific things. And if you want to catch all 3 parts, I will link you up to all of those below. All right, here in part 2, we are going to be doing some word art based on this 49 and Market embellishment pack. Now, I have done word art in the past, but I never know who's going to see my videos, and we have this inspiration this time, so let's go ahead and do this. Before we dive into the actual technique for this, I wanted to talk a little bit about the markers that I use. I use these Tombow dual tip markers. One end has a brush end, and that's the end that I use. I really like the Tombows because of the caps work very nicely. They don't get lost. They clip onto each other no matter which end you're using. And the brush tip is nice and sturdy so that I can do these techniques. If you hold this one up nice and straight, you get a very thin line, and if you give some pressure and some sideways lean to your marker tip, you get a nice thick line, and we're going to use that in making our word art today. So you can see I'm just kind of writing out the word hello freehand. I'm going to show you some ways to start this process before you get comfortable doing things freehand. And this isn't my perfect example of writing hello, but I've done it enough times that I can show you what I do when I'm just freehanding things. This is the other pen I like to use, which I'll put the links in the description. This one is not as thick of a nib, but it is I don't know what the material is that it's made out of, but it is way more flexible than the other markers, and I find that I really, really like it. It does come in multiple colors, not a lot of colors as far as I know, but I will link you up to that just in case. I do like the thickness of the Tombow markers, so that is mostly what I'm going to be using today. I did go ahead and swatch out all of my colors so that I could match them up to the project that I'm trying to match these word arts to. And here is how I'm going to start. If you are uncomfortable with your handwriting, you have lots of tips that you can use to make things look more tidy. I just trace this either edge of my ruler, and my ruler happens to be about 1 inch wide. The exact measurement doesn't matter so much as getting these lines in place. So I drew those 2 ruler lines, and then I measured the halfway point, which is going to be 1/2 inch, and I'm drawing a dashed line. I also did the same thing at the bottom with another solid line, and that will be because when you have some letters that have those descending shapes to them, and I will show you that here, you're going to need room for that. And if you have these lines in place, which you can erase later, and you will need to erase later, and we'll get to that. When you have these lines in place, that really helps you keep everything even, lined up, tops and bottoms, bottom edges, and this is the tip that will help your writing look better. Now, when I start this process, I always write my words in pencil first, and this is just giving you an example of how some of these work out. I always write my words in pencil first so that any mistakes that I make, I can erase them and correct them before I put down the permanent ink. Now that here, I'm going to show you how I was correcting something. The other reason why we're going to erase is that when you do put that permanent ink down, you most likely won't be able to erase the pencil anymore. And depending on what color of ink you're using, those pencil lines may be visible right through the ink, especially with lighter colors like yellow, which I will be using today. All right, so I wrote my first word, and the word is fun. I'm going to erase just the areas that are near where I'm going to be using that ink. I don't have to erase everything at this point. And with the word itself and any of the guidelines that are touching the letters, I want to take those way, way back so that, like I said, that pencil won't be noticeable once it gets trapped under the ink. Now, when it's down low, you can't really see it, but when I bring it up to the camera, you can see the haze of the word there, and that will be enough for you to be able to work on this project. Most likely. My eyes are getting worse, so it's getting harder, but for now, I erase it to the point where I can see it well enough, but it won't be distracting if it shows through the ink. All right, and then we begin the process of tracing over our writing. On every downstroke, I push the nib down so that it becomes thicker. On every upstroke towards the top of the paper, I lift the pen up to the tip so that it becomes thinner. And I'm taking my time. This is real time here. I'm taking my time and I'm going slowly, and I'm just tracing those letters up and down and really thinking about, okay, now I'm changing directions. I'm going down, push the pen down harder. If you're going to err on one side, go ahead and do a first pass with just the tip of the marker, because you can always make your lines thicker later. So that is one tip. Also, I didn't mention it before, but when I am putting my words down in pencil, I do spread my letters farther apart than I would with my handwriting. So that leaves room for the thickness of the marker. And also it just gives it a different feel to basic handwriting. All right, here are some fussy cutting tips, because you will likely fussy cut these out. You can just cut them into rectangles, use them that way, or use banner dies, whatever. I like to fussy cut them because that gives them more of that bought ephemera look. And when I'm fussy cutting, I leave a nice big border, because that way if I'm off a little bit, it's going to be less noticeable than if I try to keep a really tight border and then I slip up. That becomes more noticeable to the eye. As I'm moving around the curves of the letter, I am not trying to get into all the little nooks and crannies. I am keeping this really general. I am just giving the scissors a slight wiggle as it moves over a letter. And that wiggle is enough to make it look like it is following the shape of the letter without me having to be so precise. And then here, as I'm coming around a tighter corner, I do make sure that I lift up my word so that my scissors, well, not the scissors rotating actually, that I can turn that paper, because I always rotate the paper and not the scissors. And then I just kind of make my way around the rest of the letter. All right, off camera, I did a whole bunch more words so that you can see how these came out. The yellow is looking super neon. But I also have these other words that I didn't fussy cut out, because generally I will leave them until I actually want to use that specific word, so that I'm not fussy cutting and then not ending up using those words. But I wanted to show you the finished products here, so I did some, but not the others. All right, that wraps up part 2 of the makes today. And if you want to join me for part 3, you can click on the link up there on the screen or down in the description box below.